We are back on the boat and back underway. We were running around like crazy because the fuel dock, there was somebody waiting to get on it. So we got some diesel, got some water, and got everything loaded on board, all our groceries and all of the stuff that we had kind of picked up while we were in Bangor. Now we are underway. We are headed for Rockland today. We are just kind of using that as a stopping off point. We are officially southbound. About 4 weeks to get to Maryland. The Atlantic tropical systems are very active right now. So we do not know if that's going to be possible or not, but we are going to hope that that's going to be possible. We're basically going to try to make a run for it as quickly as we can. As soon as we find some weather windows that look good, we'll take that. We are this week looking at the remnants of Ida coming through, which will mean that we probably are laid up for a day or two just because of very heavy rain and the potential for a little bit of wind offshore. And then there's another big front coming through on Saturday, Sunday, something like that. So we may not get very far this week, which means we'll probably have about 3 weeks to get down. So, good news. We have anchors down here in Rockland and it's like early afternoon, so we've got plenty of time today. Bad news. I was up in the cockpit and I heard like a sloshing sound coming from down below, and that has happened one other time that we've lived on the boat, and I knew exactly what it was because the first time it was such a pain in the ass to clean up. So I came running down the companionway and the toilet bowl was overflowing, and it happens not because like why your toilet at home would back up, but it's because our the wet flush versus dry flush, Andy accidentally left it on the wet flush, which like water slowly will trickle in, but no water is going out. So it's not like your home toilet. Like if your home toilet runs, basically it just like stays at a level. But if your boat toilet runs, it makes a really big mess. The last time it happened, totally my fault. First time it happened, my fault. Second time it happened, Andy's fault. On the bright side, he had just cleaned the toilet this morning, so at least there's like not that kind of yuckiness. But the big problem is we flush with salt water here on Ecola, so the overflowing water that was coming into the floor and onto the rugs and everything else was salt water, which is not good. We cleaned up. It doesn't look like anything went into the bilge, luckily, because of the rugs. I think it all just kind of soaked into the rugs, because if it had gotten into like the cans in the bilge, we would have had a big ass mess to deal with. So what a great way to get back to boat life. Mm-hmm. So we have a manual toilet here on Ecola, and you can see here there's a wet flush and a dry flush. So normally the bowl sits dry the whole time, but if you leave it on wet, and if the seacock down here is open, the seawater comes in through this, goes up and into the toilet. We don't have a vented loop on it because we don't have a lot of space. If it's open, which it's not right now, it's closed, basically water will just soak in until it comes up and over the bowl because our toilet is below the water line. So we're really, really cautious about moving it over, and just every once in a while, I mean, and I don't know how long we've had this toilet for, but we've only done it twice. So, but it's definitely scary, which is why when we leave the boat, if we're not going to be on the boat, this here is always closed. It's like the last thing we do before we leave the boat every time we leave the boat. So the remnants of Hurricane Ida are coming through. Up until this morning, the weather forecast looked like we were only going to see like 15 to 20, maybe gusting 25. We were planning to go to Tenants Harbor, pick up a mooring there because it's very protected out of the north, and we've never been to Tenants Harbor. But this morning we woke up and one of the major models is like directly out of the east for the worst of it, which is now forecasted to be 30, like gusting 35 to 40. So now we're up into gale range. So we are in the process of figuring out where in the heck we're gonna go. It's looking like we may potentially end up back up in Pulpit Harbor, which is where we were waiting out Henri earlier this month. It's only a little bit out of the direction we want to be going. The problem is that like the next closest anchorage with good protection from both the north and the east that the dog can go ashore is almost 12 hours from here. And we could go to Booth Bay, which is about 8 hours, but in going to Booth Bay, we would have to pay for a mooring to get the protection we need, and moorings there are pretty expensive. And so basically the plan right now is to try to go to Pulpit to anchor. This was not supposed to go this way. We're gonna get going so that we can make sure we grab a spot, because yeah.
You think it's gonna fill up when people start seeing the weather report?
I'm so grumpy right now. I'm gonna be so grumpy if it's nothing. But my gut is telling me that this one is more likely to be something than what we saw a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was we saw Henri. So I don't know. My gut feeling on this one's not good. So let's go find some protection. So it's 9 o'clock. We've gotten out of bed now. We woke up around 5 when it started pouring. We have gotten a lot of rain. There's about 6 inches of rain in the dinghy right now, maybe a little bit more. Andy's going to bail that out in just a second to take Aiden to shore because the rain has started to let up. So he's going to get him to shore now. The wind is picking up though. We're sustaining around 10 knots at the moment, but we're seeing gusts up to like 25. At one point this morning, the anemometers picked up a sustained of 25. So I think that it's actually a lot worse than that. We're just only seeing that because it's so protected in here. Because if you look out past Pulpit Rock right now, it is like not pretty out there. Other thing we're running into is that it is high tide right now, and we're getting just a little bit of swell around the corner by the rock, but we are just as low as it goes right now. So hopefully as the tide comes up, we'll get a little less rolly, and so it's not a huge deal. We're not rocking and rolling too bad, and the wind waves are practically nothing, but it's just a little bit of what we're getting around the corner. So definitely more than what we saw with Henri, that's for sure. Questions about what we do when it rains, and
you're looking at it.
You're looking at it. We stay in bed a lot. We also do a lot of work on these days, but today it's a little too bouncy to be like editing or anything, so we're just gonna probably read and nap, and then maybe when it calms down a little bit this afternoon we'll do a little bit more work. It is the day after we saw the remnants of Ida. We are well rested, which is nice. The timing of the storm made it so that we basically had the worst midday yesterday, which was basically kept us from losing any sleep over all of this. It's very chilly today. It's just damp and like 58 degrees. So Andy just put up the enclosure. We are going to get headed out. There's a little concern about how big the seas are going to be out in the bay, but we're only going to Tenants Harbor today, which is about 3 hours. I don't think it's going to be a big deal as long as we can keep the sails full, which right now is looking like it's going to be pretty possible. We're gusting up to 14 at the moment, but now that we've got the enclosure up, it just doesn't feel quite as intense as it has been. So it doesn't sound as intense. Everything just kind of gets quieter. And if there's one thing that we have learned over the last year, it is that anytime you can make everything quieter, the less intense everything feels. The only time either one of us ever gets seasick is when we don't have enough food. We got a nice big breakfast this morning, picked up down in the cabin, moved some stuff around just in case we get tossed around for a while today. It should only be about an hour and a half of kind of open water, and then we're kind of in between islands for the last little bit. So this enclosure is like one of the best things we've ever done on this boat. Like, it is so nice and toasty. The wind is like, I mean, it's not windy today, and it's quiet and warm. Dry. 10 out of 10 would recommend. So we've been just cruising along at about 5.5 knots, but the wind just has come down significantly in the last 10 minutes or so. We're down to like 6 knots apparent. Most of that's from actual wind decrease. We're seeing a decrease in the seas and stuff as well, but we may have to take Willie off right now because he's having a fit. Honey, he's off by almost 30 degrees. He can't correct from that. He's maxed out. Jeez. We had one reef in because when we left Pulpit, it was like sustained 15, gusting to 20. And now we are like sustained around like 8 and gusting to 10. So we have full mainsail, full head sail. We're putting along right now like 4.5 knots, which is super comfortable. Still beating the catamaran behind us, which is always fun, but they're catching us. It's funny when like you start the day with a reef in and then you, not even like 2 hours later, are motoring because the wind is like 2 knots. So we got a decent sail in, and hopefully we turn a corner up here and our apparent wind gets a little bit better. True wind is like how fast is the wind actually going? If we were standing still, what would be happening? Apparent wind is the true wind plus or minus your boat speed based on how your boat is either going into the wind, which would be plus your boat speed, or if you're going downwind, it would be minus your boat speed. So it's kind of like, how are you actually feeling the wind at any given time is your apparent wind. So that's our wind speed. That's our speed over ground. So that's our GPS speed. And then this right here is where the wind is coming from. This little yellow is how the boat is feeling the wind, what direction it's feeling the wind from. So we know that it's feeling the wind from the front. We're doing 5.5 knots forward, which means that most likely the wind is actually coming from down here at like 3 knots. Wind cannot make up its mind. We were just back up to like 13. Yeah, and now it's plummeting again just because I put the jib back out and we turned the engine back off. So, I don't know. But what do you think? What do you think, bud? And we're going to have to turn downwind again in like another 10 minutes, which means the engine's probably going to have to turn back on again. I don't know. We'll hope. We're not getting the spinnaker out today. We don't have very much farther to go. We've only got like another 6 miles, so it would require like a lot of work to get it out. So the reason that it's pretty important for us to be under sail right now and why we keep just like trying our best to sail is because we are back in Muscle Ridge Channel, which is a lot of lobster pots. So this might be the last of the super thick lobster pots, though.
Hour has been like 5 knots or 20 knots.
Yeah,
that's been like the only thing we've got.
Made it to Tennis Harbor just as the wind completely died. But a calm night on the hook was just what we needed. That and a trip to town to get some dinner. Picked up dinner. Now back to the boat. Andy said it's all downhill, but it's not. Some steep hills. It's only a half mile, but woo! This we got dinner from tonight does like gourmet like grilled cheese, so like right up our alley. And it looks so good. This one is like brisket and caramelized onions and Havarti cheese. And I don't remember what else is in there, but it looks delicious. And then this one is like mac and cheese, but with pimento cheese.